Hello there, welcome to the Saroy channel, wherever you are in the world, and so much love to each and every one of you. How are you doing? I do hope you're doing remarkably well. I'm doing great, thank you very much. And you're at part 3 of our story tonight, so if you haven't heard part 1 or part 2, click on the description because you don't want to miss out on this fabulous story. So let's continue with part 3 of our story. For a brief moment, a shadowy being passed us so fast, but with the sun in my eyes, I was squinting. But I knew I'd seen something. Clarice was so excited about what we'd seen, bubbling over with enthusiasm, and talking as if the big blob of black that passed us by was a good friend of hers. Children, in my experience, can say the strangest, most idiosyncratic things at times, and Clarice was no exception to that rule. But I knew we had seen something quite substantial in size, and whatever it was, I did not believe it was a bear for a moment, but it's amazing what you will do to persuade yourself otherwise. I hasten to say that I was gripped with terror, my heart swinging around in my chest like a carousel at a fair, and the skin above my lip was sweating in trepidation, for observing even a faint impression of something titanic in size, covered in tenebrific hair, is enough to leave one feeling faint with apprehension. I bolted at breakneck speed through the woods, pushing the stroller over the bumpy earthen trails as fast as I could. My breathing was furiously ragged. Clarice was saying she wanted to see the bear lady. Why did we have to leave the grove? I wanted to talk to the bear lady. Her name is Cosie. I couldn't believe that Clarice had made up a name for such an ambiguous entity that we had just observed in the woods, albeit ever so briefly, and as far as I was concerned, I had seen way too much to put me off venturing into the wood grove ever again. When I reached the house, I was heartily relieved to see that Izzy was back from her mysterious adventure in her red SUV, which was parked next to my car in the carport. I noticed she hadn't been shopping as I had suspected. When I asked her where her groceries were, she looked at me evasively, with a shifty expression on her face, and said unabashedly, "Would you believe it? I left my wallet at home. How silly of me!" I knew Izzy was duplicitously hiding something from me, but I overlooked it, as I had something pressing on my mind that I needed to address with her, and I was trying to think of the gentlest way to broach the subject, without her reacting adversely to what I had to say. By all accounts, Izzy was not remotely happy to know that I'd found out a dark secret that she had kept from me. I suppose I couldn't blame her for that, because it was quite some secret that you really wouldn't want others to find out about, as it could easily blemish your reputation and wreck your marriage. The previous evening my cousin Tyler had paid me a fortuitous spur-of-the-moment visit at my parents' home. I was thrilled to see him again. I hadn't seen him for years, since Izzy's hen party, when he so happened to be attending a business conference at the very same hotel where the hen party was being celebrated, that incidentally I was hosting on Izzy's behalf, as I was her matron of honour for her wedding. I had shown Tyler my paintings in my studio, and he always appreciated my work, as he had a creative instinct and loved both tone and colour. "My word, you're talented, Lucy," he said appreciatively, as he examined my work. "I love this piece most especially, with the woman in the floating dress, staring very wistfully into the pond. I'd like to buy it from you. It's almost like the woman in the picture is searching for something, don't you think? I sometimes feel that about my very own life, you know," he said, looking at me longingly and rubbing his hand over his 2-day-old stubble that made him look ruggedly handsome. "What I'm saying by that, Lucy, is that I think I'm looking for something in my own life, searching for something, but I don't really know what it is." "Well, that makes sense to me. Maybe we're all looking for something, you know," I said reflectively. "If you think about it, we're all searching for fulfillment in our lives. That's perfectly normal. Everybody is always searching for something. It's human nature, our natural instinct, I think. We're always learning, growing, and seeking." "I'm serious, Lucy," said Tyler. "This piece is speaking to my heart. I really do want to buy it from you. I cannot leave your house without this painting." "Are you being serious?" I asked, looking at Tyler in surprise.
Yes, I am being serious as it happens. I've never been more serious.
Don't get me wrong. I was delighted that Tyler had become attached to a piece in my collection that had clearly spoken to his heart. I was even more amazed when he pulled out his checkbook and wrote me a hefty check for the painting. I can't possibly accept this, I said, looking at the sizable check he had presented to me. It's way too generous.
Lucy, your art is incredible, said Tyler. I'm lucky to be buying this piece from you. One day your work will be selling for a vast fortune, I'm sure. Imagine buying a Picasso from the man before he became famous. I see buying your art as a wise investment on my part. But this is a lot better than an investment. I love the piece. I tell you what, let's go out to dinner, shall we, in town, for something to eat, and to celebrate the fact that I now own a piece of Lucy Paget's art. I think it's worth celebrating, don't you?
Well, if you put it like that, how could I possibly refuse? Before long we were sitting in a booth at my favourite diner in town, that in my opinion makes the most tender, delicious burgers that you've ever tasted. The chef insists on making the burgers with grass-fed beef. Believe me, you can taste the difference. But he also uses a secret blend of spices that give the edge over any other burgers I've ever tasted. It's so good to see you, Tyler. It's been so long, I said, after the waitress had presented us with some delicious platters of steaming food, where the smoky flavours of the meat were making me literally salivate. It really has been too long. I've missed you, Tyler. You do know there are such things as cell phones on this planet. It would have been nice if you'd dropped me a line from time to time to let me know you were still drawing breath. You've always been the wild card, haven't you? You're so elusive at times. I can't keep track of you. The last time I saw you was at Izzy's hen party, would you believe? I was hosting that hen party for her. I got the shock of my life to see you were staying at the very same hotel as we were, where I think you were attending a business conference at the time.
That's right, I was. It's a small world, is it not?
Said Tyler, chuckling, taking a large bite of his burger.
Believe it or not, I also got the shock of my life to see you and your friends at the hotel. Izzy's very lucky to have a good friend like you, because the hen party you hosted was a roaring success by the looks of things. Most of the girls appeared half-cut.
Yes, they were, and I'm not quite sure as if that is actually a compliment, Tyler. I mean, Izzy, you should have seen her. She was as drunk as a skunk.
So tell me, what have you been doing beyond your art? How have you been managing financially? I know it can't be easy devoting your life to your passion. It doesn't actually pay very well at this stage, I shouldn't imagine.
Tell me about it, I said, shrugging my shoulders nonchalantly. I've been making money, though, as an au pair for Izzy and her husband Chuck. They've been paying me very well to look after their little daughter Clarice. The couple are not short of a bob or two, so they can afford to pay me well.
Clarice,
said Tyler, raising a brow.
Who calls their daughter Clarice? After Silence of the Lambs, he chuckled. It's like calling your son Adolf Hitler or Judas Iscariot, in a manner of speaking. I don't think I've ever heard of a kid being called Adolf or Judas before. Have you?
It's true, and you make a good point, Tyler. But Clarice was a nice lady in the Silence of the Lambs, was she not? Who had an unfortunate interaction with Hannibal Lecter. It is different. I mean, Clarice was not evil, was she?
I know, said Tyler. But even so, mud sticks, does it not? By mere association. Anyway, I'd never call my kid Clarice, even though I will agree it is a pretty name.
I agree, but you know, Izzy was in love with the name and was absolutely determined to call her daughter Clarice, and it actually suits her. She had a doll growing up, I believe she called that name. I'm grateful for the job, though. They pay me extremely well.
Well, I should think so, said Tyler. Don't underestimate what you do. Looking after the most precious thing in their lives should not come cheap. And besides, from what I've heard, Chuck is minted, so he can afford to pay you generously. How old is the kid?
She's 3 years old. So cute. Would you believe it? Izzy must have been pregnant on her wedding day.
Chuck was obviously more than a little eager to start a family, don't you think? I chuckled. Sometimes you can't keep a good dog down.
3 years old, is that so? Said Tyler, looking at me soberly, trying to digest the information. I noticed his hand appeared to be shaking on the craft beer he was drinking. So tell me, what does this child look like?
That's the funny thing. It's weird you should ask. The child doesn't look at all like Chuck. Don't you think that's weird? I mean, everybody was expecting the child to have Nordic looks like his dad. You know, the blonde hair, the fair skin, the blue eyes, that sort of thing. But Clarice has black hair and green eyes and doesn't look like Izzy or Chuck. Isn't that weird?
Do you think that the girl looks like me? Asked Tyler quietly.
What a funny thing to ask, Tyler. Where's this coming from?
I'm being serious, said Tyler, suddenly grabbing my hand. Does she look like me? It's important. You need to tell me.
Well, she's got your colour eyes, hair colour and skin tone, I guess. But why would you ask this? You're not suggesting...
I am suggesting. I think that Clarice might very well be my little girl.
What the hell do you mean, Tyler? You can't be serious, I gasped incredulously, with my eyes the size of saucers.
Do I really need to spell it out to you, Lucy? Come on, girl, wake up. I was at the hen party, don't you remember? I was drinking in the bar, long after you girls had retired to bed. Then I saw Izzy in the bar, later on. She wanted ice for her water, and there was no ice in her sweet. I was also quite bladdered myself. I persuaded Izzy to have a nightcap for the road. She didn't refuse. We got talking. One thing led to another, and Izzy came back to my suite with me. She was very flirtatious. She knew what she was doing. I thought she wanted one last fling before she tied the knot with her husband, and I was fine by that. What her fiancé didn't know would not hurt him.
You're kidding me! You didn't, did you? How could you do that, Tyler?
I'm not proud of myself, Lucy, but it happened. In a more sober frame of mind, I wouldn't have allowed it to happen, but it did.
But Izzy, she was getting married. How could you take advantage of her like that?
Look, Lucy, I'm not proud of myself, but please don't take the moral high ground with me. It takes two to tango, does it not? Believe me, that woman threw herself at me, and I was too drunk to refuse her advances. She was viewing me as a steak dinner she wanted to devour, as if she was starving, and I'm not kidding either.
I stared at my cousin in abject shock. I don't know what to say, Tyler. I'm absolutely astounded.
I know, said Tyler. Don't you worry. I'm probably more bewildered than you are, based on what you've told me. Do you think that Clarice is my little girl?
Well, I think there's a strong possibility that you are the father, but you're going to have to leave well alone. Do you understand, Tyler? If you put your nose in Izzy's business, you could dismantle the entire marriage. Do you want to be responsible for tearing a marriage apart like this?
Of course I don't. But if Clarice is my little girl, I think I deserve a relationship with her. Don't you think?
I think you need to forget it, Tyler. Izzy is my best friend. I can't be responsible for shipwrecking her life and her marriage. But I tell you what I will do for you. I will do some digging. I will tell Izzy I know what happened on the hen night with you, and see what she has to say about it.
I need you to find out, Lucy, if Clarice is my little girl, said Tyler, squeezing my hand tightly. I just need to know.
Even if she is, Tyler, you're going to have to forget it. One day you'll get married and have kids of your own. Forget about Clarice, Tyler. Think about it as a sperm donation of sorts.
Tyler ignored me. He squeezed my hand again. I need to know, Lucy, if that little girl is mine.
As you can imagine, after I had learnt about what Izzy had done with my cousin on the night of the hen party, I was more than a little discomposed. But I knew I needed answers, and once I confronted Izzy, I knew I would worm the truth out of her, one way or another, even if it killed me. I was at art college with Izzy. We'd been the very best of friends for the last 8 years, and after she married her husband Chuck, we remained inseparable. Let's just say I know when my best friend is lying. For one, she seems incapable of maintaining any eye contact with me. She deliberately avoids my gaze, and I always observe a distinctive red flush developing on her décolleté, which even law enforcement recognize as a classic sign of somebody lying. I knew unequivocally that my cousin's claims about his night of passion with Izzy must be true. But when I confronted Izzy, she was admitting nothing, and I understood perfectly why. I mean, who wanted to admit that a couple of weeks before your wedding, you were frolicking around mischievously with a member of the opposite sex? It's not a good look, especially for someone with an unblemished reputation like Izzy, who was squeaky clean. Well, she was, until then. Tyler was genuinely concerned that he might be Clarice's father, and I suppose I couldn't blame him for that. There is no doubt in my mind that little 3-year-old Clarice did not look at all like her father. I do know for a fact that Izzy's husband Chuck is part Scandinavian, and his family all have those classic Nordic looks. It was a given when Clarice was born that she was going to have blonde hair and blue eyes, but she turned out to have dark hair, green eyes, and an olive complexion. A very pretty child, I might add. I hasten to say that my cousin Tyler had dark hair and greenish eyes. I knew that Izzy had too much to lose if her husband Chuck was to discover that his child was not his own. It would probably destroy him and blow their marriage apart in a second. I could not turn a blind eye to all this. But if Clarice was related to my cousin, then indirectly she was also related to me. And so I also had my reasons for desiring to know the truth. I had in mind, on behalf of my best friend, to lie to Tyler and to tell him that Clarice was definitely Chuck's child. But supposing she was not. I know about the hen party, I told Izzy, studying her reaction closely, and sure enough her face began to blush, and a red colour steeped across her décolleté and rose up her neck. What about the hen night? She asked me gingerly. You know, I said. No, what? She asked me. Spit it out, Lucy, for goodness sake. I'm not a mind reader, you know. I could feel my cheeks burning and a heat rising up my face. I know you were intimate with my cousin Tyler. I know that Clarice might be his child. I've done the math, Izzy. I know. Izzy glared at me. How dare you, Lucy? Listen to you. Your cousin is deranged. If he thinks we were intimate, it's all in his head. I assure you nothing happened between us. We might have exchanged a few words at that party, but that was all. Do you hear me? Yes, I saw him on the night of the hen party because he was at the same hotel as we were. But beyond that, nothing happened. If you say so, I said, knowing that if I broached the subject any further, I would cause Izzy great distress, but I unequivocally knew she was lying to me. In truth, I could not imagine how Izzy was feeling. To be confronted like this. There are some secrets you don't even share with your best friend. Everybody knows that. Who doesn't have a skeleton in their cupboard? We've all done things we regret in our lives and wish we could take back, but we can't. Me and Izzy were close, but Izzy is a proud person, incredibly proud, and there are some things she won't even confess to me. She's the kind of girl who sailed through school pleasing her parents and teachers and never putting a foot out of place. Izzy has always been opposed to infidelity and the behaviour of unscrupulous people who defile the marital bed with their indiscretions. Izzy had never smoked a day in her life, never taken or experimented with drugs, but she did drink to excess on that hen night and behave in ways that were idiosyncratic for her to say the very least. So I realised when I confronted her about my cousin that she was in abject denial and probably even choosing to lie to herself. I will admit I did feel annoyed with Tyler for taking advantage of Izzy, even if she was throwing herself at him indiscriminately. And I told him as much. The woman was drunk, for goodness sake. She wasn't thinking straight. But then again, so was Tyler. Tyler should have refused her advances, but Tyler assured me that Izzy knew what she was doing at the time. But I think he was telling himself that to ease his conscience. Because believe me, on that hen night, Izzy did not know what she was doing. And I can verify that because I was her matron of honour, and I had been ploughing her with far too much alcohol. So I blamed myself for what had happened. But the less said about that, the better. 1 month later, Izzy is lying comfortably propped up against a pile of goose-down feather pillows on top of her sumptuously cosy bed. She's rolling the envelope with the DNA results of the test from the paternity of Clarice against the DNA of Adam Applegate in her hands that she'd sent off to the laboratory for testing. She can hear that Lucy is in the nursery playing dollies with little Clarice, and the tinkle of her daughter's jubilant laughter echoes through the walls of her bedroom. She had told Lucy she had a headache and needed to lie down in her bedroom for a while. The curtains are tightly closed, blocking out the intrusive bright light of the day. The dark shadows that bounce around her room are oddly comforting. Izzy has got a throbbing headache, in a manner of speaking, as the source of her headache lies in the printed words written within this benign-looking envelope that might as well contain a poison gas or explosive, as the contents have the capacity to blow her life apart. She knows the results of the DNA test she sent off to the laboratory are in this letter. If she opened it, she would know once and for all whether Adam Applegate was Clarice's father, and there is a part of her that doesn't want to know. A month had gone by, and she had been unable to open the envelope. She was terrified of being confronted by the bold and brazen truth, as sometimes it's better not to know the truth and to live in blissful denial. Suffice to say, she had risked life and limb to break into Adam Applegate's house to steal his toothbrush from his bathroom, and faced an unfortunate fortuitous confrontation with an elderly woman, who was clearly Adam Applegate's grandmother. The old woman had wanted Izzy to wash her dentures in the dishwasher. It hadn't taken a rocket scientist to discern that the old lady had Alzheimer's disease, and clearly thought Izzy was the home help, who had a penchant for making her porridge horribly lumpy. Izzy had climbed an inauspicious obstacle course and taken incredulous risks to send off the DNA swabs in the post, and now she had a terrible fear to open up this envelope. With trembling fingers and a pounding heart, she had started to tear the envelope open, but then she just couldn't do it, as she had been consumed by an overwhelming, paralyzing fear. Finally, she had had enough. She couldn't put herself through this trepidation a moment longer, and enough was enough. She pulls out the drawer in her nightstand, removing the gold lighter that had once belonged to her grandfather. She walks over to the waste-paper basket and lights up the envelope until it is consumed by flames, until all that is left is a pile of ash, and suddenly she feels so much better. Clarice is Chuck's child, she told herself, and even if he isn't by blood, he is in every other way, and that is all that counts. She's not going to allow her life to be haunted by these grievous worries any more about who Clarice's biological father actually is. None of that matters. She had been mortified when Lucy had confronted her over a month ago with all kinds of questions about the hen night. She had demanded to know if Clarice was in fact Tyler's little girl, but Izzy had insisted that she and Tyler had never been intimate. She knew that her friend Lucy wasn't buying her denial, but that was too damn bad. She was not a slapper, and she didn't want Lucy to think she was. Her behaviour at that hen party had been deplorable, but she wasn't going to spend a moment longer living with regret, because Clarice was the very best thing that had happened in their lives, and Chuck was devoted to his daughter. There was a gentle knock on her bedroom door. "Come in," she called out. Lucy walked into the room. "Boy, it's dark in here," she complained. "It's a beautiful day. Why on earth would you block it out, Izzy? I find when I have a headache, I don't like any light at all." "I suppose that makes sense. How are you feeling?" she asked. "Would you like me to get you some Tylenol? You look as pale as a ghost." "I'm feeling much better, thanks, Lucy. You better go home now. You've been great. I'll be fine, I promise." "If you're sure you're going to be all right, Izzy, I'm worried about you. I'm quite happy to stay over, you know. Watch over Clarice until you're feeling better. You look very washed out these days. Maybe you should see a doctor or something. Perhaps you're low on iron." Izzy gave her friend a watery smile. "I'm fine, Lucy. You get going. I've got a lot on my mind, that's all." Lucy's face looked contorted by worry. "If you're worrying about Tyler believing Clarice is his daughter, don't fret about that a moment longer. I've got it all sorted. I've been telling him that I think it's unlikely that he's the father. I think I've persuaded him. I told you, Lucy, nothing happened at that hen party. If Tyler thinks he's Clarice's father, it's all in his head." "If you say so, Izzy," said Lucy, wrapping her arms around her friend affectionately and giving her a warm hug. Just so you know, if you want to ever talk, I'm here. And by the way, if something did happen between you and Tyler, I'm not going to judge you, Izzy. On the night of the hen party, you were really bladdered. Mistakes happen, you know. I think even if Chuck was to learn about that night, I'm sure he'd forgive you. Your husband is a good man, Izzy. He loves the bones of you and Clarice. I mean, there are lots of fathers out there, probably raising other people's kids and they don't know it. If you think about it, Chuck is Clarice's father through and through, even if it's not by blood. And nothing can ever take that away from him. I think you better go, Izzy. You've said enough. I really don't want to talk about your cousin Tyler anymore, if you don't mind. I want to focus on giving Izzy her bath and something to eat for her supper. You can see yourself out, Lucy, she said rather brusquely. She really didn't need Lucy going on and on about her cousin Tyler being the father of Clarice. Much as she loved her best friend, ever since Lucy had confronted her about her cousin Tyler's claims, things had become increasingly more tense between the two girls. Was Lucy privately wondering if she was related to Clarice by any chance? This whole wretched business was such a dreadful mess. Izzy hated herself for her behaviour on the night of the hen party. How she wished she could take it back. In truth, she'd have liked to confide in her friend Lucy about the shenanigans she made of her hen night, but she couldn't do it. For her it was like being a dog returning to its own vomit again and again. She didn't want to harp over an evening that she would rather forget. She had decided unequivocally that she was never going to drink ever again. She couldn't be trusted with alcohol. She didn't like to think she'd lost control that night. How she wished she had stayed in her hotel room and not been driven out of her suite in a quest to saturate her insatiable thirst for ice water. She didn't want Chuck to find out that he might not be Clarice's father. It would devastate Chuck, and beyond that he'd think his wife was a cheap little tramp who had behaved like a hooker on the night in question, ostensibly no matter what he might think of her. If he were to learn the truth, it couldn't be worse than what she thought about herself. I'm a slut, she told herself. I'm a real slut. After Izzy had bathed little Clarice, she left her clean little girl sitting at the breakfast nook, happily eating her dinosaur-shaped fish fingers with tomato ketchup. Clarice did not like eating dinosaurs without their heads. If the fish finger was disfigured, she didn't want to eat it. I don't want to eat a dinosaur without a head, 'cause it's very cruel to do that. If you say so, dear, said Izzy. But you're eating the dinosaur anyway, are you not? Then maybe I should become a vegetarian. You mean maybe you should become a vegetarian? But you don't like vegetables, do you, Izzy? So that's going to be very hard. It takes a lot to persuade you to eat any vegetables. Because vegetables don't taste very nice, Mummy. Well, Mummy's going to her bedroom now, she told her daughter, after hearing the distant trill of her cell phone that she had left on in her bedroom, on the bedside table. It was probably Chuck telling her he was running late. She dashed up the staircase 2 steps at a time and grabbed her cell phone. Hello, she said briskly. Is that you, Chuck? It is, sweetheart, came Chuck's warm voice. I'm running a little late, I'm sorry. I have a meeting with the managing director of CR Holdings, and I'm expected to treat him like a demigod tonight, with no expense spared. We need to get him on our good side. I'll be ploughing him with a plethora of French champagne, and all the trimmings, of course, in the hope that he'll sign the deal on the dotted line. I think he'll be malleable. I mean, we all stand to gain from this merger, do we not? Well, good luck. I hope it goes well for you, Chuck. Under the circumstances, you would be wise not to drive home tonight. If you've been drinking, you should get an Uber. You're right. I think I will get an Uber home. I'm not sure what time I will be back, sweetheart, but I have a good evening ahead of me. I'll try not to wake you up when I get in. How is my little beloved Clarice? Oh, you know, full of mischief as usual, and is still refusing to eat any dinosaurs with heads, without their heads, I mean. Chuck chuckled. How lucky I am to have 2 beautiful ladies in my life. I'm a very lucky man indeed. See you later, sweetheart, and don't you dare wait up for me. I won't. Goodbye, Chuck. Have a good evening. As Lucy descended down the stairs to return to her daughter in the kitchen, she noticed the kitchen door was swinging open on its hinges, and Lucy was gone. Izzy began to panic. Where was her daughter? How had her daughter managed to open the kitchen door on her own? It wasn't locked, but her daughter would never have been able to reach the handle. Izzy began to panic, her heart pounding violently in her chest, while a bitter taste of nausea seemed to overwhelm the back of her throat. And with a trembling body she dashed around the house, calling her daughter's name in earnest. "Clarice! Clarice! Clarice! Where are you, Clarice?" Clarice loved playing hide-and-seek. Was this one of her cute little games? "Clarice, where are you? It's Mummy. I can't find you, baby. Show Mummy where you are. I don't want to play hide-and-go-seek now, do you understand? I need to find you." She called out her daughter, but there was no response, and all that greeted her was the ominous sound of the grandfather clock in the hall. How she wished with all her heart that her daughter would emerge from behind a curtain, giggling mischievously, but none of that happened. After searching the house frantically, she ran out into the yard. Had her daughter wandered off into the woods? She was always talking about the woodgrove and her fictitious friend, the bear lady. Surely she wouldn't wander into the woods at this time of the night, all on her own. It was ominously dark outside, and she was greeted by a cool breeze brushing against her cheeks. She ran into the house to put on her sneakers and retrieve a torch, and hurried all over the property, calling out her daughter's name frantically. But she heard nothing beyond the sounds of the crickets and the frogs, and the occasional hoot of an owl. With a frozen heart, Izzy ran into the sprawling grove of trees, and when she entered the lofty labyrinth that stretched out before her, like a murky maze of haunting ambiguous shadows that transgressed across the grove, she felt overwhelmed by the darkness that seemed to be closing in on her from every side. It was almost impossible to see her own hand in front of her face, but a mother's love can refuse to be intimidated, so Izzy ran through the tenebrific congregation of trees, occasionally tripping over a gnarled root, a leafy fern, or an unfortunate dip in the ground that she failed to see. She called out her daughter's name, and then something airy happened that sent the fear of God pulsating through her veins. Someone else was calling out her daughter's name. Somebody else, but who? In terror, Izzy abandoned the woodgrove to call the police, as she was now certain her child had been abducted. She tried to phone her husband Chuck, but as she had expected, he'd switched off his cell phone, as he wouldn't want anyone disturbing him during his important meeting. Izzy phoned Lucy. "What's up?" came Lucy's friendly voice. "Is everything all right, Izzy? Are you feeling sick? Do you want me to come around to look after Clarice for you? Is your headache bad or something? I really don't mind, you know." "It's not that. It's not that. What on earth is wrong? It's Clarice," wailed Izzy. "She's gone. Somebody's taken her. I've looked for her everywhere. My baby has gone. Someone has taken her." So there we are. That's the end of part 3. Part 4 is tomorrow night. I look forward to you joining me then. Until next time, goodbye and good night.